Hello, mathematicians. Okay, here is lesson 1. I have already taught this in class, but I figured some of you might need the video or you might want to go over it again, especially since we are graphing quadratics, and that is one of the targets that some of you still need to work on. So first of all, lesson 1, page 1, quadratic roots. Quadratic roots are the points, and I put S because there might be more than one, the points where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Now, the quadratic roots do have many different names. In the past, I have called them x-intercepts. They are also considered solutions, kind of like the answers. And we do call them zeros because our y is 0 when we know our x. So, you may hear roots, x-intercepts, solutions, or zeros. It all means the same thing. It all means the point where the parabola meets the x-axis. Now, for numbers of solutions, depending on where our parabola is on our quadrant, you may have 2 roots, you may have just 1 root, or you may have no roots. In other words, there is no solution. So notice here for my roots, I have 2. To label the point, we would put the number on the x-axis and comma 0 because it's 0 on the y. We would also do that for the second point. However, when we write roots, we actually do these curly brackets and then we just put the numbers. And we close it with our curly brackets. Now, if there's only one solution, it means our parabola is coming down and just skimming, just touching the x-axis and going back up, or technically it could come up from the bottom and then have 1 right there. So we would write that point as the number on the x-axis and comma 0, or we would also just do our curly brackets, write our number, and the curly bracket. If we have no solution, that means that our parabola has not crossed or touched the x-axis. Now, as we go through here, we are going to go ahead and I am going to practice graphing quadratics so that you can see where the roots fall for these quadratic equations. So I'm going to do, I would say, at least 2. Now remember, to graph a quadratic equation, you need to find the axis of symmetry using x equals negative b divided by 2a. Then you need to find the vertex by plugging in the x and finding the y. Then you fill in the table with more points and then you graph it. So let's go ahead and get started with number 1. So number 1, remember that this is ax squared plus bx plus c. So in order to find my axis of symmetry, I am going to use x equals negative b over 2a. Now I am going to be kind of writing small, so you might have to turn it up and listen. Or you know what, let me go ahead and raise it up. Let me get my box. There we go. Okay, that might be a little bit easier. Okay, so remember, b in this case is a positive 4. So I have a negative 4 in parentheses. And then a is my 1. So I'm going to go 2 times 1. So x is negative 4 divided by 2. So x is negative 2. Now that I have x, I'm going to plug in to find my vertex. Everywhere I have an x, I'm going to put a negative 2. So I have a negative 2 to the second power plus 4 times negative 2 minus 5. If you need to see what I've done, pause it and look and write it on your paper. Okay, negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. 4 times a negative 2 is a negative 8. And then I have a negative 5. Now I need to combine these. I have a negative 8 and a negative 5. They are same sign, so I keep it as a negative 13. And I have a positive 4. So in this case, y equals 9, negative 9. So my vertex, x is negative 2, y is negative 9. So I'm going to put that in the middle here, negative 2 and negative 9. So actually, that is the vertex of my point. So if I'm at 0, I go to -2, 1, 2, and then I go down to -9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so now, since this is a positive, I know my parabola is going to open up like this. But I've got to figure out where my points are going to go. So I'm going to add in a little piece of paper here. I normally turn my paper over to the notes piece, but then it's kind of hard for my, my video here. So I'm just going to put some notes down here. Okay, now remember, in order to do this and fill in the table, I take the 2 points below it and the 2 points above it. Now, I only have to find these two because these two will then reflect to the top. I am going to choose the -1 and the 0 because those are a lot easier to work with than -3 and -4. So let's use the -1 first. Now remember, this -1 is an x. So every time I have an x, I'm going to write in -1. -1 squared plus 4x, so plus 4 times -1 minus 5. Okay, -1 times -1 is a positive 1. Plus a -4 and a -5. So -4 and -5 are the same, so they become -9. And then I have a positive 1. So y is -8. Now zeros are cool because as soon as I plug in my 0, y equals 0 squared plus 4 times 0 minus 5. Those all disappear. And y equals -5.
Sorry, I couldn't.
Now, like I said, once I figure these out, they actually reflect up. So this one becomes -8, and this one becomes -5. Kind of cool like that. Okay, now let's go ahead and plot those points. First one is -4, -5. So I'm going to go to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, down to -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a point. -3, -8. So 1, 2, 3, and down to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I do know that I have to have a mirror on the other side. So my other one's going to be right here. And my last one is going to be right there. Okay. So now I need to find my roots, where they are touching. And you know what? I do need one more point. Darn, because notice I don't know where they are exactly, and I certainly don't want to guess. So I am going to do the 1. As soon as I find that one, I can flip it up there. So let's go ahead and do one more. Y equals 1 squared plus 4 times 1 minus 5. So that would be 1 plus 4 minus 5. Oh, look at that. It is a 0 because 1 and 4 is 5 minus 5. Y equals 0. And since this one is a 0, then that means this one is a 0. Okay, so I got to go to 1, 0 right there. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there we go. So there is my parabola. And my zeros, or my roots, are these two right here. Notice it's when y is 0. So my roots are actually right here in the table. -5 and +1. So for my solutions, I'm going to come over here, make my curly brackets. I'm going to put -5, comma 1, because I have 2 roots, and I am done. So I know this is the long method. It is graphing and then finding your roots. Now you would follow this same method for each time that you want to graph your equations. Fortunately, I'm going to show you a few other ways to find roots later in this unit.